Hey, it's Shan here. This week, I speak with Anthony Pappalardo, the writer. You're not the pro skateboarder that maybe a lot of you are familiar with, the writer. However, his contribution to skateboarding has been as significant, in my opinion. He's very humble, quite reluctant to actually emphasize his contribution to skateboarding. In fact, he downplayed it, but Anthony has written for some of the most significant media outlets in skateboarding over the years, including the likes of Slap Magazine, Transworld Skateboarding, Monster Children, Jenkem, just to name a few. I think he even did some work for ESPN. And he's also worked with numerous other very significant skateboard brands over the years. Anthony shares about his life so far from growing up in the East Coast area of America, his involvement with skateboarding and also music, very passionate and has written about music. Specifically, he actually wrote a book called Radio Silence, which is profound. He's also the co-author of the book Skateboarding Power and Change with Dr. Indigo Willing, who sits in with us this week as co-host. And we have a great chat about his life, but it branches off into various tangents about some of our society and cultural issues. Anthony's very well educated, he's very considered and measured in what he says, and reluctant to speak out about anything that he hasn't taken the time to educate himself on. A true academic. And I feel like that message alone is very important to maybe educate yourself before you go and speak publicly on certain topics. I think that's something in there for all of us. So I love that theme, but otherwise enjoy my conversation with Mr. Anthony Pappalardo, the writer. Cheers. Yeah, but I tell you what, like reading your book, it's heavy reading. It's not easy reading. Have you heard that before?
Um, it's kind of I think a lot of the people who read it maybe might be used to academic texts or something. I mean, it was heavy for me. That's not typically what I do. So, I do a lot of research writing, but it's not in that style. So even sort of a lot of it, reading it back, I was like, okay, like, who wrote that? You know what I mean? It's yeah, it's definitely a different style, but I mean, I also think it's heavy in topics, right?
Yeah, I mean, it really delves into some like bigger picture topics. And I guess one of my overriding questions is like, and I don't care who answers this, either you or Indigo. Like, what do you feel your main purpose for writing a book such as this was? Like, who are you trying to speak to with it?
I can go first. I tend to, in this type of writing, specific, I don't really think about the audience too much. It's more about like isolating what the message is, and then because that's going to change over time, right? Like even when you start to write a book, it might not be done for 2 to 3 years, so that audience changes. And if you look at skateboarding, like a generation in skateboarding is like 4 years maybe, right? Right? Like it's so short. So um uh, as far as like thinking about like who's going to read it, the idea is just one, there's so little text about skating that aren't like referential to say the brand or the person who did it. Photography book about X, it's that person's story, which is totally good and valid. Like we need that, right? And then it's like, or the independent trucks book of 20 years of the brand, or the tracker book. And there's not very many, or there wasn't historically, there hasn't been very many texts about like Florida skateboarding, or like a genre or whatever. So more of the purpose of the book was like to document a period in time, and then have that, see how that changes over time to people. And the big, I think the big, if there was a sort of a North Star for the whole project, was to bridge this idea between skateboarding, this thing in the ether that we talk about and has different meanings. It's like the way people talk about religion, like it's so vague, right? It's just has a very deeply personal meaning, but it means things to different people. And the industry, which is this other component, and how they can influence each other, work with each other, and they kind of dictate a lot of the dynamics. And I think like a great example is if person X has a shoe tomorrow, there is a dialogue about whether that person should have a shoe. Why do they have a shoe? What does the shoe look like? And all of a sudden, there's this massive importance that is dictated by product. And I'm not saying that's a good or bad thing, but it creates these interest, like a pro graphic. Let's take it back even further. Someone's name on a board creates a dynamic. You know, there's, as soon as one person has a board, I'm sure the first person to have their name on a skateboard, there was 8 people saying, fuck that person, right? I should have my name on. And so it instantly like creates this hierarchical thing. And there's all these other social dynamics that are trying to like sort of I don't want to say at war with that, but interacting with those dynamics differently. So I think the ultimate goal was to like highlight that. And sorry for a super long answer, but to me, like,
I love it.
There could be things that are frustrating for someone who's new to skateboarding or someone who doesn't have a lot of understanding of behind the scenes, that maybe this book demystifies that a little bit, because you're kind of getting a look behind the curtain a little more on how things work from nonprofit to brands. And it might sort of lessen the frustration of people of like why things are happening and then what they don't like about them, what they want to fix. But it's very, I think with anything, it's very difficult to make any progress if you don't really understand the nuts and bolts of what you're trying to repair, right?
So driven by progression?
Yeah, I mean, it's everything. I'm not, as much as like I'm in this room with artwork from old records behind me and old shit everywhere, I'm not a nostalgic person, you know, like there's always something, and maybe that's just the little kid in me, like there's always something cooler behind the next door.
Yeah, I definitely feel the very non-biased approach to it, and you make some really good points there. And I mean, I'm so accustomed to skateboarding journalism being centered around either the profile of a skateboarder and the brands and the companies they're affiliated with. It's just commonplace, right? And it's understandable because people have to sustain living. I think my next question around it is, I mean, do you feel that someone who's new to skateboarding or a young person could relate to that book?
Indigo, do you want to? I mean, I'm
Yeah,
happy
of
to
course.
answer too, but I don't want to.
What are your feelings
Sure.
on that?
Well, a lot of the people that we interview, and we do interview 42 people, we have a quite large age range. So that starts with people in the Skateboarders Hall of Fame. So we've got like Cindy Whitehead and Peggy Oki and Tommy Guerrero. But we do actually interview people that are just making zines and just starting their voice and getting it out there. So Izzy, for example, came out with a zine called Heel Flip, as in HEAL, like healing yourself. And, you know, we could have interviewed just people that publish in, you know, the bigger magazines, but this is really important to have that age range and that sort of different stages of getting their voice out there. And similar to Anthony, I think just looking behind the curtains and looking at some of the quiet achievers that don't always, you know, get a platform to speak, like the Fro Skate team. They're very young and they've got a very fresh take on skateboarding because they've only been skating for about 3 years. And already they're like on Apple billboards. They have a Nike collab. Like it's their scene is very different to all the hard yards and different types of challenges maybe that older generation face. Not that they don't face challenges, but we're just learning from all ages.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
love that.
I mean, to your point of like, do I think a younger person can understand it? Like, I don't. There's kind of two things at play there. Like, the one thing is, even though this book is like a research book, there's, in trying to be without bias, right? Like, you're still making a piece of art. Like, writing is art, and it's like, I don't know. Think of like your favorite artist, or are they that, unless they're super commercial, they don't really care if you understand the album, right? You're just listen to the album, you'll figure it out. It's going to mean different things to you at different points in your life. So you kind of want to weave that into it, and also it's kind of okay if people don't understand it. It's not an intro to politics. It's not an intro to social dynamics within skateboarding. It's a snapshot of a time. So hopefully, like, I'm I'm hopeful that it is challenging, because I think challenging things have a longer shelf life, you know?
Yes, sir. I mean, because I'm university educated, and I feel that it's a very academic document, and that someone that maybe hasn't had certain levels of education may really struggle to grasp some of the concepts and continue with reading it. And like, I guess you've answered the question. You're not concerned about that. Maybe that it will take them out of their comfort zone and challenge them to extend themselves that way. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I wish ideally there's like a primer, right? Like, read this if you've read these, but there aren't that many of these. You know, there are other works, but they're also like, it's very split down the middle. There's like the academic works and then the very personal works. And so I don't know. But I mean, I also think like, if you even just looking at like Greg Hunt's photography books, I get an understanding of skateboarding. You know what I mean? Like portraiture, I get an understanding. Like, I'm not really riding for one or the other. Like, to me, it's like, it's the same thing I said when I did this book on like hardcore punk. And at the time there was like a couple titles out, and a lot of the pushback initially was like, why do we need another book? And I was like, well, what if there's only like one book on space? There's only one book on jazz. Like, I want there to be a section, if there were brick and mortar stores that you go in and there's a skateboarding section, you know what I mean? And they all build this world. You know, it's like like a board wall. You know what I mean? Like, you pick what you like, you know?
Yeah, yeah, I love that. I just want to go off on a bit of a tangent. You just mentioned like a skateboarding photographer, and I want to ask you personally, Anthony, who are some of your favorite skateboarding photographers of all time and why?
Damn, I'll work backwards. I think it might be easier.
Let's go.
I like Matt Price, what he's currently doing.
Did you listen to his episode on Nine Club recently?
Yeah, it was great. It's great. Some people just, I like how you can kind of tell within a couple minutes with an interview how it's going to go, you know? And like, he was just very much like it just rolling and one thing into the next. I guess it's really hard because I'm already like, in my mind, I'm like, well, I don't want to forget, da, 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 da. So I'll just say like, you know, stuff that made an impression on me. We talked earlier, like Lance Dawes photography, Grant Burton, you know, I'm trying to think who else, like the most, Glenn Friedman's early stuff, you know, Brian Gaberman. I don't know. Wow. It's really hard to, I feel like I'm a mofo. It's really hard, like it's hard for me.
Jump in with some of the people we have in the book as well? Like Norma Ibarra is a really amazing photographer, and Sarah Houston in Australia. And what they're capturing is, you know, a lot of the women's scene that's coming up. And again, we have Atiba Jefferson in the book as well. So there's some favorites there as well, but they're just sort of at the other end of the earlier years. And Mike O'Mealy, what a photographer. I've heard his name before, that's all, maybe when I jumped in.
Yeah.
Definitely throw in like Spike Jonze as like maybe number one. Incredible. And
Filmmaker.
And Gabe Morford is another one. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'd have to like thumb through my old mags and really think about like all those things that made such an impression on me. But yeah, it's really hard to just start rifling them off.
Yeah, and I think as I'm getting older, I'm starting to realize the sheer importance of what they're doing in terms of documenting, you know, this activity that we love. And I want to relate it to what you guys have done. Is you've created an historical document, and you know they've been doing that as well. And actually, when it comes to interviews and podcasts or whatever, I prefer to listen to an interview with a skateboarding photographer sometimes to hear their perspective, because often they are looking at it from they're part of it, but they're sort of outside it. They're outside looking in through a different lens. So their take on how things go down and the evolution of the culture is so profound. So like, for example, Mike O'Mealy is probably one of my favorite skate photographers. And, the way he captured 90s skateboarding, I think it's especially 90s street skateboarding is really sort of unparalleled. And you mentioned Lance Stores, like that Lance Stores and Mike O'Mealy had the biggest impact on me. And I still struggle to wonder why when there's so many amazing skateboard photographers out there. But again, it's just perspective, those slight variations on angle and seeing things that other people don't. So yeah, it's just an observation here.
Yeah,
Look,
I also think real quick it comes down to like there's people who are like approach image making and skateboarding as they approach documenting in different ways. Some people it's very literal. I need to make someone's doing this big trick, I need to make it look the biggest. And other people like a Spike Jones are like, let me put the camera underneath this rock and shoot it from the bottom up, and it might give you like a different feeling. Yeah.
And then there's that supreme approach that we
Strobeck.
Yeah.
Where it's like more zoomed in.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah.
Are you a fan of the Strobeck, either of you?
Me personally? Yeah, I am. It's unique. I can see why it's so popular. I can see why Supreme's so popular in their riders.
I think Bill is willing to take risks and do different things, and like, who was really talking about like colorization in videos before Bill just went really hard and was like, I'm gonna get this video super professionally colored and saturated, and like it's almost kind of like an interesting take of when he was tasked to make Cherry about like, I'm going to do this branded thing, and he wasn't hiding it. He's like, fuck it, I'm branding it. You know what I mean? And like kind of created a different aesthetic. But, if I were to name, if you gave me 20 spots of like the most important videographers, Bill makes that list for sure. He shaped what modern skateboarding looks like.
Yeah, you'd turn up to the park and people would be talking about how he films. A lot of other people would just say, I love that clip or I love those tricks, but not necessarily the filming. So definitely stands out.
Yeah, I mean, and let's face it, he emphasizes fashion so well. I mean, that last Supreme video that came out, sorry, I'm having a mental blank. I just watched it the other day. Anyway, like I'm watching it going, skateboarding's amazing. I love the spots. I love the variation in tricks. But I was legitimately going, oh my God, look what he's wearing. Like, and that looks so rad. That's so different. I would never wear that. I mean, I'm still wearing like, black cargos and a black t-shirt, and thinking I'm killing it. But those guys are just like out there with their fashions. And it's sometimes I'm like, I can't believe he's wearing that, And yeah. I don't know. Actually, was it a Supreme and Adidas collab video with Gons in it? They were cruising around somewhere.
Oh, that was the abnormal communication that's ongoing series. Yeah,
that's what I watched.
I mean, the one thing I'll say about Bill is that Jake Rosenberg said this, who's a phenomenal videographer, filmer, filmmaker, is that like someone who's documenting skateboarding in a way that's effective makes you feel something. That doesn't mean it makes you feel good. It doesn't mean it makes you feel, like you like it. But I think great art has to make you sort of like make a decision. Like even if I don't know if someone's like, I hate that. Good, you felt something. You might turn around and end up liking it.
I saw Gummo in the DVD shop the other day, and same thing. You have a reaction to some of those films. It's just something memorable. It's not that you like it or it's pretty. It's kind of grotesque, but yeah. So I think definitely Strobeck kind of has that effect on people as well. Like I find some people hate his style, and they're really energetic about it, and other people see it as art and like look at it through that lens. And yeah, there's so many interesting things to be said about videography as well as photography. So yeah, good topic.
Yeah. So Anthony, I want to get to know you a little bit more. So where did you grow up?
I grew up my youth was split like half in Massachusetts, about 30 miles north of Boston. And then we moved about 10 miles north of there, past the New Hampshire border. So I grew up in a city called Lawrence, which is Lawrence, Massachusetts, a pretty infamous city for a lot of interesting social dynamics, corruption. There was an article that like the mayor was like the most corrupt mayor in the United States, which I'm not going to speak on that because I think there may or may not be some bias in how he was portrayed, but there was also some very shady things that were happening. So I grew up in like a very urban environment, and then we moved to New Hampshire, which wasn't like in the mountains, New Hampshire. It was just very typical suburbs. And I don't know. I grew up in a time where it wasn't weird for like a 7-year-old kid to be walking around by himself, and so I did everything by myself, or with friends, and that's how I got into everything. Like from seeing graffiti from the first time to hip hop culture, like in the streets for the first time. Probably everything except for skateboarding. I didn't really see skateboarding in the wild until a lot later. Like to my probably like 12 or 13, because it just wasn't, skateboarding was this would be like the mid to late 80s, and there was like that Back to the Future boom. Then it kind of settled down, but by the time I started skating, I was in New Hampshire, and there wasn't like plazas or anywhere you'd see this stuff. So everything was still kind of like required you to know someone who could get you somewhere. There's no public transportation in most of New Hampshire. So everything was like sometimes I would pool money together with a friend to take a taxi somewhere to go skating, and then like figure out how to get home. But yeah, it was like I don't know, like I said, like half my childhood was there, and that's where I went to high school. In New Hampshire's where I went to. Super, super white, Christian, very like devoid of culture, because there's no real public space, there's no museums. It's just a very like culturally void town. So everything for me was just about getting out of there and meeting people who are interesting, which required just going to Boston. It was just going to Boston all the time. Boston was like New York to me, as far as like culturally diverse or something.
Did you feel accepted in your town with your ethnic background?
I mean, it's kind of funny if you think about it. It's an interesting question, because when you're in places that are super white, there's a hierarchy of white. You know what I mean? So like I'm on the lower end of white, because I'm Italian and like Italian American, and I'm Sicilian, so that's like the lower tier of Italians, right? So like, it's like all the stupid stereotypes of movies, like, is your family in the mafia, or like, like you're a greaseball, you'd hear all those things. But I mean, I just wasn't accepted because I didn't give a fuck, like doing anything outside of like this very like normal culture of like there was basically a uniform to my school without a uniform. Like you wore polo shirts and cuff jeans and boat shoes, or you were a dirt bag. What
were you wearing?
I was wearing I wear the same shit now. I'm still 15 years old, like semi baggy jeans and a fucking t-shirt with shit I like, and yeah, I mean,
you kind of describe these like 80s movie, like the douches, that wear the boat shoes.
Yeah, I mean, kind of like I identify with all of that. Like there was total, like there was the cool people, there was the dirt bags, and then there was just the others. And the others were like sort of a potluck crew of just like theater kids and whatever else. It was very like any 80s movie, really. And like I kind of wasn't, to me, my whole thing was like, as soon as I get my license, I don't give a fuck. Like this all disappears, and I'm just in this thing for X amount of hours per day. And then I would just figure out ways to go to school less. Like I found out you could take an independent study. So it's like once you had to go talk to your guidance counselor. And I remember this guy, Mr. Charbonneau. And I said, how many fucking credits do I actually need to graduate this thing? He's like, oh, you're almost like, and I was a sophomore. He's like, oh, you're like more than halfway there. I'm like, oh shit. And I looked at the thing and I was like, cool, I don't have to take math anymore. I don't have to take science anymore. I have to take these things. And I'm like, can I just take these all at once and get the fuck out of here? And he's like, no, you can't. You can graduate early, but my parents wouldn't let me do that. So I just took a million independent studies, and I would do favors for the teacher. Like I took this, like, it was called industrial arts. It was like a very primitive graphic design class, right? And the guy's name was Ken. I forget his last name. And he was opening up a furniture shop. So I was like, if I don't have to come to this class, I'll help you do errands and shit like that. And he was like, rad. So he would let me leave school early, and then I would drive into the Boston and go skating and do whatever. And then like when I graduated, I'm getting ready to go to school. I have this shitty summer job with the town I grew up in, like public works. And I'm at this traffic triangle, right? It's like kind of like this big like artery of all the streets in the town. And they had me go there to like pick up dog shit and weeds or whatever. And I'm on my hands and knees in like a high vis suit, picking up shit with gloves on my hands. And that teacher came by, and he just stops, doesn't say anything, and he says, "You're going to go on to great things." And then just fucking gassed off. So that was like,
he was serious too. He wasn't being sarcastic.
Yeah, no, he was definitely rubbing it in while I was picking up shit.
He was being sarcastic.
He was making me eat shit while I was picking up shit, for sure.
You kind of want to send him your 3 books that you've written. Just, I don't know, he's a prezi.
I guess another question I'm always curious about, but before I ask it, firstly, I want to say I really identify with what you're saying. My background is Maltese, and I grew up in a very, I guess, what could be classed as white Australia area. And I was born here. My mum was born here, but my dad was born in Malta. And I have a surname that wouldn't be regarded as a stereotypical white Australian name. Yeah, and for most of my young years, I was called a wog. And it's like, I guess it's like a slang, semi-derogatory term for, like you said, like, what are they saying? Like greaseball,
or something.
Yeah. So, and again, when I went to a big city, I just was like, oh my God, there's other people like me. And I just felt like this feeling of just like, like I don't have to be self-conscious about my surname. I don't have to be self-conscious about the fact that I've got slightly darker skin and dark features. So it's really healing to hear that, bro. So thanks for sharing it. I want to know about your parents. Would you say you had a close relationship with them as a young person?
Yeah, I had a kind of an interesting upbringing. I don't really talk about it too often, but I grew up in a 2-family house. My grandmother, on my mom's side, my grandmother, my uncle, and my aunt lived in the first floor. We lived on the top floor, me and eventually my mom, dad, 2 sisters. Everyone we knew, like we had all this family, like everyone was like an aunt or an uncle, but they weren't really related. Tons of Italian American people. So everyone we knew was Italian American, French Canadian, or Jewish. Those are like, I didn't know anyone Irish. Like, it was like those 3 ethnicities. And like I said, like you would walk everywhere. So like you would walk to this guy's house, you would walk to the butcher. Like it was very like oldie timey sort of thing, and like very like proud of our heritage. Like when we were talking before, like in my head, I'm like, Italians, we made up fucking math and the greatest art. Like it's not true, right? But like Italians think they made the greatest architecture, the greatest food. So like you think you're the shit, and then other people are calling you like a wop or whatever, and you're like, wait, you're getting knocked down. And then you actually think about it, and you're like, I don't know. Other than fashion, Italians really haven't done shit in like 100 years. But anyways, so my parents my mom and dad were the first people in their families to go to college. My mom eventually got her doctorate. She was a nurse, then she became a nursing instructor, then she became the head of her program at a community college. My father was a chemist. And it was really trippy because my parents would be going to night school back and forth, and I'd just be pinged around everywhere. And I would go to this, it was called the Lawrence Experiment Station. And at the time, and forgive me, this is a very big story, but I'll compact it. There's a huge problem in the area where all the drinking water was coming from, called red tide, which is toxins coming off shellfish. And it was fucking up the water supply. So my dad and his coworkers were just trying to figure out how they can stop you know, this eco problem to make the water more drinkable for, you know, all these different communities, all these different counties. And so he would work late nights, and I would just be like a kid over there, and people would be like fucking making drugs to stay up. Like people would be getting high to stay up because they're just like on some mission, like, we gotta fucking fix this shit. And like, I didn't really know, but like you would see people like drinking, smoking weed, and like I said, they're chemists, so they know how to make drugs. And then, you know, I grew up in the 70s and 80s, so there was like, I guess the Jaws movie at the time would have been like Jaws 2, and like my uncle took me to see that, but him and his friend were tripping on mushrooms, and I'm just a fucking kid. I shouldn't even be seeing it, and they're fucking tripping balls. And then we would go light off these fucking rockets with the little parachute guy that would fall out, and I'd chase it around, and they'd laugh at me because they're tripping. And like, I just did all this I was around adults my whole childhood, you know. I wasn't around many kids. I didn't have any, you know, like my siblings are 5 and 8 years apart, and there was no like cousins really. So I was just around older people doing older people shit, like going to bars, fucking watching people get in fights. Like, I don't know. It was a kind of a chaotic. I didn't know it was chaotic until later, until you talk to other people and they're like, yeah, my dad has a fucking chess club. And you're like, oh, cool. Like, my dad's a fucking chemist and beat up your dad. You know what I mean? Like, it was just fucking totally weird. And my parents owned some businesses. They owned a fish market, and my uncle ran the fish market, but it got closed down because he was stealing lobster traps and stealing other people's lobsters to sell them to make more profit. Like, it was all shit like that. Like, it was a weird. It mellowed out when we moved to New Hampshire, but to answer your question, because I'm not answering it, my parents were like super curious people. They took us to museums. They encouraged us to read. They educate. Like, there was no way I was not going to college. That was 100%. And, you know, there was a period of time where I wasn't close to my dad because he didn't understand everything I did. Because like my dad just wanted to not get in trouble because he came from kind of a fucked up place. And so he thought like everything I'm doing, like going into Boston, going to clubs, was getting high. It meant getting high, committing crime, doing graffiti. Like, and I was doing a lot of that shit too. He wasn't wrong, but I was just kind of like, I was such a headstrong dude. I was just like, fuck you, I'm going to do. And he's like, well, you're not an adult, so don't say fuck you yet, big dog. You know what I mean? And we had one blowout. Like, I just got to the point where I was like, I'm out of this spot when I'm 18. Fuck this. I don't really care. Like, what can they do? And I was just defying them left and right. And I came home once, and he was like, you're 3 hours late. Like, do you really not give a shit? I'm like, nah, I don't. What's going to happen? He's like, I don't know. You tell me what's going to happen. And I was like, nothing, man. And he's like, you think you're a fucking big man now? And I'm like, yeah, I'm taller than you, motherfucker. Growth spurt. Like, what? Like, and he just looked at me and he just gave me this look. And I just, for 1 minute, I was like, I'm going to fuck this dude up. Like, me and my dad are going to fight under this tacky ass chandelier in the entrance, the foyer to our house. And I'm like, it's fucking on, dude. Like, this dude's getting worked. I was so like cocksure, right? He doesn't know how many fights I've been in. And I'm like, it's on. For like a split second, I looked at his eyes and I was like, sorry, dude. And and we just kind of like bonded, and we were like super tight after that. It was a very like light bulb, very quick. Like, he knew, like, he would have fucked me up too, for sure. But I don't know. Anyways, yeah.
Wow. I love that story. I think in some ways it's a rite of passage for a young man. They want to challenge their father. I had it as well. It's kind of like, it's a transition to manhood. I've got to outman my main man.
Yeah, and I do want to say too, my dad wasn't like hyper masculine. Like, he didn't even curse. You know what I mean? He was a very just kind of like quiet dude. But I knew he was like, you're more scared of the people who don't talk shit. Like, my dad never talked shit. He was never that way. And I knew it was what I was doing was a terrible idea, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. we would just, he was a talker. Even though I said he was quiet, he could also be a talker, and he would just give you these like moral lessons and shit like that. So it's an interesting dynamic. But
Did you feel isolated in your situation though? You said you were the youngest. Were there feelings of isolation within that chaos?
no, I'm the oldest, so I felt
Oh,
like
excuse me.
I
With
felt
the
like
age difference?
yeah, so I felt like the protector, whatever the
Okay.
fuck that meant. But I mean, I'm the only boy. I have two younger sisters. My dad was like always working, so I kind of just grew up, and like then there was my grandmother helped raise me, my aunt helped raise me, so I was around women all the time.
Can I ask, did they accept you as a skater? Like your dad, was that ever an argument?
At first, he was just like, "That's what," because he knew skaters from the '70s, so he's like,
Mm.
"That's what fucking stoner losers do," you know what I mean? And like his impression was just like you hold a skateboard and you smoke weed and be a fucking loser. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Like I don't think he didn't particularly care. You know what I mean? Like I'll tell you, since I'm telling stories, I'll tell you one other story. Like once he just saw like, oh, you're just going to do your thing and it's a physical, like my dad was big into like do something physical. It's good for you. He was over it. And then when I was a freshman in college, I got arrested for skateboarding. Not really for skateboarding. They tagged me with civil disobedience. It was like a crooked cop. He wanted to fuck with us. He wanted me to, like, he was pushing me to see if I would fight him back. Like rookie cop, like typical bullshit. So I get arrested in Roxbury, Massachusetts. They wouldn't let me get bail, so I had to do a night. I got arrested like the sun's out, and I had to do a night in like a holding cell, and then go to court the next day. And you go alphabetically, and there was a chance because my last name's Pappalardo, they weren't going to get to pee, and then I would have to do another fucking night and wait for my court date. And that whole, I'll spare you all the shit with that, but there's a whole other craziness
Wow.
within the time waiting to go to my court date. But I get out of my court date and they wouldn't give me my board. They confiscated my board. They wouldn't give it back to me. And I missed work. So I get out and I come home, pre-cell phone. There's all these messages on the machine. I call my dad. He worked about 15 minutes from where I lived in Boston. He's like, I'm coming over. We go get dinner. And he's like, tell me what the fuck happened. There was nothing about like, he knew I didn't do anything wrong. You know what I mean? Like I just told him what happened because we had this policy of like not lying to each other. So I told him, and he's like, were you talking shit to the cop? I'm like, no. And then I showed him my wrists. My wrists were all fucked up. He cuffed me from behind, as you do. And then he would grab the middle of the chain and flex it. So it kept digging into my wrist. And he was asking me, does it hurt? And he's like, do you want me to put them tighter? I said to him, I'm like, you do whatever the fuck you do, big dog, And so that was me. I did talk some shit, but I knew I was fucked anyways.
Yeah.
So my wrists had these scars, like they were bruised and whatever. And he was like, that guy did that to you. Da, 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 da. And he's like, well, what happened? I'm like, they threw it out of court. They didn't even give me a fine. I had to pay a processing fee of $25, And he's like, well, where's your fucking, you can get your board back? I'm like, no. Mm-hmm. He's like, all right. He's like, you're getting that shit back. And he was so prideful. He was just like, no, you call every day till you get it and then let me know. So finally they're like, you can come down and get it.
Yeah.
And we go down to the station and my dad's like, I'm coming with you because he wanted someone to be a witness, right? And I had to go to the cop and he goes and he gets my shit out of the evidence room. And they had confiscated so many boards. There was a brand new setup next to it. And I'm like, it's that one over there. Like I was trying to get the new shit. And he's like, no, your name's on this one. So then I had the board and my dad looks at me and he fucking takes my board and throws it in the trash and we walk out.
Oh
and I'm like, what the fuck did you do that for, dude? Like, why'd you make me spend like a month to get this fucking board back? And he's like, I wanted to show that cop that it didn't mean shit. He's like, fuck him.
Not to punish you.
Yeah, and then he's like, and then he bought me a new setup, which was pretty
rad.
Although new trucks suck, but yeah, that was pretty funny.
Yeah, new trucks suck. Which, let me guess, our Ventures weren't they? Anyway. Going.
I ride Ventures now, man. I fuck with Ventures.
Yeah, I guess what I was building up to earlier, it's such a commonality among skateboarders being from broken homes, separated families and whatnot. And skateboarding becomes such a refuge and an adopted family of sorts. was that what originally drew you to skateboarding, or was it just because you loved it? What got you there originally?
Thought it was fucking magic. Like you see someone doing
Not because
like
you wanted to escape your home life.
no, like nothing is that direct for me. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Like I was into I thought BMX was really cool, and they had skateboarding in the BMX mags, and the like watching people skate half pipes was like it looked insane. Like how do they do that? You know what I mean? Like and the graphics, you know, like I was a comic book kid, and the graphics were like back then were like an extension of comic books, and even to the point where they were serialized. Like, whoa, what's the next fucking Rob Roscop gonna look like? You know what I mean? Like there were like these interesting visual identities, and then it was also tied to punk, and I was into punk at a pretty young age on my own, and so to me it was just like I want to try this thing that looks cool. You know, and then the culture came later, because all the people I met early on skating were just kind of like heavy metal kids who had a skateboard, who thought like going off a jump ramp was cool, like, you know, like jumping over some barrels with like a cigarette in your mouth and like going and like partying, you know. And like I don't like Evil Knievel shit. Like I don't like back and forth is mad boring, and there was no like vert ramps near me, so and street skating was starting to happen, and then that was that. But it was just something like that. Being said, like subconsciously, everyone I skated with came from a fucked up place. Every single person.
No, same.
Every single person. Like, this dude can't come out. Why? You find out later his dad punched him in the face. This person, fucking, their parents like are on heavy drugs. They, you know, like you're feeding people. You're trying to like share stuff with people, because you might have a little more, you know what I mean? Like hooking people up with old gear so they can have a setup and stuff like that. And like, yeah, everyone was, I mean, other people have talked about that, like those 80s, people who got into skating in the 80s, I think. I don't think it's unique to that time, but it felt like every single person I met was from they were not from a linear background. They were not from a stable background. And
so,
go ahead. Yeah.
So it gave you a sense of identity?
I mean, I don't know. No, not to be contrarian, but like my identity was like I just always had this irrational confidence. So like whatever I think is cool is fucking cool, and I don't care what you think. So if I think I thought Kiss was cool until I thought Kiss was not cool. Then I thought Metallica was cool until I thought Metallica was not cool. Then I thought the Sex Pistols were cool. Then I thought Minor Threat was cool. Then, you know, like I thought fucking Run DMC was cool until I was like, they're corny. I like fucking DOS Effects. Then DOS Effects was corny. I like Tribe Called. Like I dress how I dress. I don't give a fuck. Like the identity is always like, the struggle for identity is just to get out the things you want. Like the struggle is like, I'm not as good as skateboarding as I want to be. I'm not as good of an artist as I want to be. I'm not as good as a writer as I want to be. So how do I enjoy the thing that I really love? That's the struggle for identity, because you're like, I love this thing so much. I love this music. I love this art. And I can't do it the way I want to do it. And then you get to a point where you're like, no, just do it your way. That's cool.
Wasn't that
sorry, identity part, you know?
I was just going to ask about the principles of punk. Wasn't like punk like you didn't have to be good? Like I'm not from the punk era or the punk. I didn't get into punk for a very long time, and I kind of felt skateboarding and punk had that in common a bit.
I mean, it's like anything, you get into it, like the shitty punk or hardcore bands aren't going to get popular. The good one, the cream rises to the top, you know what I mean? And like there's rules within it. And
yeah,
I mean, luckily for me, like there was like this like white nationalist scene that was really small that had nothing. They couldn't even come to Boston. They would get fucked up. Like that was not happening. So there was like the scene that I was involved in was like, especially in the early 90s, like I got into punk like in the 80s, and then I was really active like late 80s on, right? And by the time like 91, 92 hit, everyone who's doing shows or like women were the main people doing all the promotion. The bills were more diverse. Politics were like really like progressive politics were coming in. There was like these collectives of people where like that's where I like met the first person I ever met who was trans, right? Who went to Harvard. And then I started working with volunteering with Food Not Bombs, and that opened up, like, Food Not Bombs was basically started to in Massachusetts to protest a nuclear power plant, and we would give out free vegan and vegetarian food. There was a service every single day. You could pop up wherever, and you give it outside, because you do the food service outside so that houseless people and people who need food don't feel marginalized, like they're stuffed in the basement of a church. So, like, for me, like, it wasn't about, like, punk to me, like my version, because I didn't get into it in its original incarnation, its first wave. It wasn't about like, anyone can do it, go up there, fucking offend people, even though I come from New Hampshire, where Gigi Allen's from. It wasn't about that. It was not about that. It was about community.
I can't believe you brought that guy's name up. Keep going.
Yeah, so it was about community, and like I don't know, there was a lot of camaraderie, and a lot of the people in that scene skated too. So it was like a lot of bleed,
Is there like a Gigi Allen of skateboarding? Do you both think, just because you brought it up?
Yeah,
Gigi Allen skated. He skated
probably
apparently.
Fucking Dwayne Peters, right? Like.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, and it's interesting all these years later to see where some of those characters end up in their older years. If I mean, but Gigi Allen's passed away apparently, so I'm not. But I want to go back to your identity a little bit. I want to hone in on that a little more.
Yeah,
so skateboarding's been a staple of your life, correct?
Yeah.
Where are you at? Do you now hang your sense of identity on skateboarding, given your involvement with it over the years and your relationship with it?
I never did. Like, I never considered myself one thing. Like, that shit, like, my nightmare is like wearing a t-shirt that says like 100% skateboarder. Like that's how, I don't know, like that identification. It's like, it's weird. Like, I skateboard. I do a bunch of shit. Like, I'm very leery to say like I am a thing. It's just fucking weird, like.
Yeah, rad. Thanks for bringing that up. And I think I spoke about this with Indigo a few weeks ago. For me, growing up skating, I started skating in the late 80s, all through the 90s. At the time, I was so immersed in there was a real homophobic culture within skateboarding, even just through the vernacular and the terminology being used constantly, like, if you were wearing something that wasn't cool, it's like, oh, that's so gay. Or if you did a trick that wasn't great and you did it like sort of sloppy, wasn't clean, I'd even say to myself, oh, so gay. And I even heard a very predominant pro skater say it once at a demo because he couldn't land a trick. He screamed out something that was of a homophobic nature. And I mean, these days, I really can't imagine that occurring. So can you sort of speak to that a little bit in terms of why do you think there has been an evolution away from that in our culture?
Well, I think a lot of it is awareness, right? Like, I was thinking about this recently, like someone was talking about how homophobic the 90s were. And part of me was like, yeah, but that was like when the real world started, and it was like a reality show where one of, a predominant character was a gay man who was HIV positive, and how much dialogue that sparked, like all the bands, like when I would think about it, it's like the majority of the bands I saw, someone in the band was queer, right? like,
okay.
Husker Du, the whatever. REM was like one of my favorite bands. Like, it felt like things were starting to get more open. And now I'm not saying they were a good time, but in my head, I'm like, well, the 90s weren't as bad as the 80s. The 80s were gnarly, and the 70s were gnarlier, and the 60s were gnarlier than that. But I think we saw sort of a quantum leap recently because, like, people are more aware. People have more language and understanding. They don't feel as alone. I think if there's any positive to social media, is that people can connect and just, hear other people like themselves. You know what I mean? And I think the tolerance, it's kind of a double-edged sword. Like, the tolerance for bigotry, homophobia, xenophobia, it's less tolerant now. But on the other side of it, I think some of it there are examples where people are coming down on folks. I'll give you an example this way. This stupid movie about child trafficking, I don't even know what it's called, but the one with Jim Caviezel. Lo and behold, bunch of people who made that movie are child traffickers and have engaged in abuse, right? And they're like terrible fucking people who are supposed to be these pious Mormons, right? So it's like there is that thing that the people who are the most vocal about some things, their intentions aren't always true. Like we do have that. But I think in as far as like progressive politics and especially gender politics and just how younger people, like a third of what Gen Z identifies as non-binary. That's a massive, massive progression, right? There has been massive, policy progression. There's plenty of work to do, but I mean, you have Leo Baker, first trans athlete to have a shoe, right?
Amazing documentary.
It's just incredible. There is a big leap, and I think that is just because there's more dialogue. Like there wasn't dialogue. Like I can only speak through my lens. There wasn't like everyone I knew who was gay growing up until college was in the closet because they were scared. Men didn't talk about mental health. Women were sort of talked about in one way by men. It was like it was still very like, I don't know if secular is the right word, but it's like there wasn't dialogue and people felt weird about everything. Now there's just more open dialogue, and I think there's more support. There's more nonprofits. There's more. I think there's more. I'm not a fan of mainstream culture, but there's more mainstream people who are willing to speak out on things. And conversely, there's a lot of noise in that as well.
Hopefully that's what our book kind of highlights as well, like those conversations now.
And one other thing, and like maybe I'm curious, like Indigo's take on this, I think this is like a very delicate thing to say, but I do think people in some capacity feel safer to be who they are now. There's a massive, massive war against trans people in the United States, right?
Yeah.
But my friends in the 90s and 80s, if they said they were gay, they thought they were going to get killed, straight up, not beaten up, killed, disowned on the street. And I think that's a big change in society. And I think the fact that like there are more allies now speaks to where society is, because it used to kind of be like the masculine, let's say like the masculine thing was like, I don't care what anyone does in their bedroom. I support gay people. I don't give a fuck. And now that's really corny. You'd never say that now. You'd be like, no, I just support people as themselves. But that like things have just changed in such a way. But I think people, I don't know. I guess like I said, I'm curious like Indigo's perspective, but I think people feel a bit safer and that there's more allyship and support to be themselves.
Yeah. I agree. I feel the safety. There is more of it. I also think people are realizing that they're actually much more accountable for what they're saying, and for a variety of reasons. If they're speaking in a public, forum such as social media, they become very accountable and they become open to various types of opposition or criticism. And also, I think if it's in a public sphere, I think there's this accountability where they could potentially be filmed or recorded saying what they're saying and then judged or ridiculed for that in a public space. But I think what it's actually doing as well is making people sit on the fence and scared to speak out about how they're actually feeling as well, whether it's an ally or whether it's oppositional. I feel like people are retreating as well because they're just so scared of being highlighted as maybe potentially a bigot and potentially accidentally saying the wrong thing and then being labelled for that. And I think that's a concern as well to me. So that's just another opinion.
I don't know if I went on a podcast like actually I don't know what the Joe Rogan podcast is about other than just like people talking. But I guess it started. It was kind of like a comedy MMA podcast, right? So if I was like an MMA dude and I went on the MMA dude podcast to talk about like supplements and training and like these cool maneuvers I can do, and then they asked me like, what's your stance on trans people in the military? I would fucking not answer that. You know why? Because I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. I know about I know about chokeholds. I know about submissions. Why the fuck are you if you don't know shit about a topic, don't fucking talk about it. I am not educated enough to speak on that. You will not trip on your words. You will not be called a bigot if you are not educated enough. But the thing is, everyone knows everything. Everyone is an expert on everything. How many fucking jerk-offs will tell you, like, oh, this type of person has a natural advantage in sports? What the fuck is a natural advantage in sports? There's no scientific data that shows, like, okay, people of this build are the best. Like, no, dude, Ray Allen is one of the greatest three-point shooters of all time. If you measured every three-point shooter, he wouldn't average out as like, he's the fucking person who was the greatest because his body makeup and his parents stayed together and he ate fucking this diet. Like, it's so ridiculous. But every fucking jerk off will tell you exactly who has an advantage in muscle density and bone. Everyone's a fucking bone density expert. I've never heard anyone talk about bone density in my fucking life.
Are they?
Oh, when you take these certain fucking what do you call it? When you take certain enhancement, when you enhance your body this way, it affects your bone density, and bone density impacts, like, I've read it all and heard it all, and it's just I don't know. I think what you're saying, like, it's kind of like the back and forth of, like, people can overhear and absorb a lot of information and then suddenly they're an expert. And I wish people would just speak to things they actually are passionate and know about.
or educate, like you said. I think fundamentally what you're getting to is, like, educate yourself before you display a strong opinion. And also, I think a lot of people just need to choose their sources of information carefully. You know, we live in a society where so many people are just educating themselves through social media accounts of various types. And I'm not saying, I don't discredit them. There's a lot of really great educational social media accounts, but maybe people need to delve deeper and into more adequate sources of info.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that comes down to, like, critical thinking. Like, if you think of, like, I'll give you some examples. Like, if you were on the fence about getting a vaccine, right?
Okay.
A lot of people who are on the fence about getting a vaccine, they read tons of information about why you shouldn't get a vaccine. And they listen to fucking Russell Brand and whoever the fuck, and they're like, see, this is all bad, right? They don't go and read texts of people. They don't read about who invented vaccines. They don't talk to, different people who work with vaccines, who have developed vaccines, who are experts in vaccines, right? Yeah. Everyone goes to the wrong source. Another thing, like, if say, like, you listen to a podcast and they're talking about how, like, how come Mike Tyson just doesn't put on a wig and become the best female boxer, right? And, like, that was like a meme, right? And that resonated with all these people. It's fucking ludicrous and stupid, right? Now, a lot of those folks, and I'm not pigeonholing everyone, they're not going and reading texts from trans people. They're not reading and listening to athletes who are trans. They're listening to people who oppose it. So it's confirmation bias, right? So, like, when we're uncomfortable, for some reason, people just have such a fucking problem going with, well, who is living a life that way? I want to learn from them. It's like, no, who's opposing their life? That's what I want to learn from. You know what I mean? It's like, it's very, I don't know, it's very backward thinking.
Yeah,
but it's
point.
very simple, though. You know what I mean? Like, if you want to understand even something you're against, you have to understand the mechanisms of it. And I guess that ties back to the book, right? Like, if you want to understand, like, I think we are living in a very often ahistorical time where, like, patterns keep emerging. Like, if I have to read one more fucking think piece about how, like, Donald Trump did this and it really means this, it's like, yes, it's a very fucking simple playbook. Marginalize everyone, marginalize trans folks, marginalize people, marginalize women, marginalize a certain class. Like, geez, I wonder how that fucking happened, because that's been happening throughout history. But if you don't know it and you see it the first time, it's like, whoa, oh my God, to his fucking followers, he's a genius, because it's like, whoa, he just doesn't give a fuck. It's like, no, bro, this is very simple of how you marginalize people and the hierarchy of things. But if you're not studying how other societies work, how other leaders ruled, if you don't understand fascism, if you don't understand, if you're like some dipshit graphic designer who considers themselves a futurist and doesn't know what Italian futurism is and its ties to fascism, like it's like you're just following memes. You know what I mean? Like meme smart is
Meme smart.
it's a bummer. It's this major bummer.
It's a bummer. I also think it's going in line with what you're saying. It's reflective of the echo chamber that is created by social media algorithms as well. And then it connects with people who are of the same mindset. And then next thing you know, they're only speaking to people who are agreeable, and they're not getting to know people who are, maybe challenging to them or oppositional. And that's what you said. I think they can be our greatest teachers. I actually heard that once, like our enemies are our greatest teachers, right? So we need to embrace them. So I like that. I love what you're saying.
It's also uncomfortable too. Like it's uncomfortable. Like your average white person doesn't want to read text by Black leaders. They're not going to read a book about the White Panthers because they don't want to hear about systematic racism because it's uncomfortable for them, right? Like they could be very progressive people, they could be very liberal people, but when the conversation is turned around, like what you've had some part in, whether it's conscious or not, that's really difficult for people. So I get why it's a lot easier for people to be like, fuck affirmative action, because there's no thinking required there. You don't have to be uncomfortable. You can be in your echo chamber and be around these other folks, and you're not challenging your views. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like, it's hard to like, understand who you are and how you can affect other people and how even your language can affect other people and want to work on that. You know what I mean? And like, I think we're seeing the opposite of like a Ted Nugent dude's like, I'll just do whatever I want. It's like, okay, cool, man. Like, I don't want the world to go backwards. I don't pine. Like I said, I'm not nostalgic. Like, I want to see what it's like in 30 years and I want to be around for that,
But you're also saying like we need to know where we've been so we know where we're going. And that's why history is so important.
Nostalgia. That's knowledge, right? The nostalgia is I'm on fucking eBay all day looking for the first board I had. Oh, whoa, I had that t-shirt. Oh, cool. That's nostalgia. That's like a dopamine rush, right? Like, and you might know everything. Ooh, I know who drew that. Wow, that's so cool. That's great. It's not how much depth of knowledge is there around like an old t-shirt. But cool. I know who made it. I know it's real. Dope. Like awesome. Like I want to know about culture and like how things evolve. You know what I mean? Like
same, dude.
I also think there's just such an emphasis on like we act like we're like social media hostages or something. Like it's so fucking hard to like not look at the shit.
I fucking hate it. I absolutely hate it. I had a moment with Instagram last week where I was like, I fucking hate it. Like, so I posted a soundbite of Indigo's interview when she was simply relaying her experiences as a young woman growing up in the northern beaches of Sydney and just really trying to create some empathy about what her life was like, from an honest perspective. And it did relate to a theme of racism. And fucking Instagram took the post down and then restricted my account for a week. And I'm like, it wasn't I just thought it was so innocent and if anything, just beautiful. But because someone of Asian appearance is speaking about their experience in what is predominantly a white culture, it gets shut down. I just couldn't fucking believe it. And I'm like, that's it. I just feel really done with Instagram if I'm just speaking openly. It's not real. It's not true. And people are just like treating it like it's the gospel. And like this, it's so ingrained in their life.
I think it's
real.
funny.
Like it's real. It's not real.
I remember like 6 months ago when everyone was scared about AI. Like every single thing was like AI is coming to replace us, or like, and then it was like we're gonna be living in the fucking metaverse. It's like we live in the fucking metaverse. Like every photo I see of someone has a filter on it. Everything is about something imaginary. There's all these like that's a whole genre of tweet is like I know a guy, I know this person, and then you say some like imaginary ass story that never happened about like this is really what the world's like in my or my son said this and it's so profound. It's like, fuck off. And it's like, we're already in the fucking metaverse. Like, I buy shit with virtual money. I hang out with virtual people. Nothing is fucking real. Everyone projects a certain persona that they're probably not, myself included, and fucking whatever, right? Like, I'm not scared of it. I just want to engage with it less. You know, like half the time I look at this shit and I'm like, fuck do I care what your fucking pizza looks like? I don't live in fucking Connecticut. Fuck do I care? Maybe I'll go. I can find good pizza. You know what I mean? Like,
What about
cool,
latte
man.
art, man? You don't like
Yeah,
latte
like I
art?
just don't. I like buying shit. I'm a consumer. Show me some cool shit to buy. You know, show me. I don't know. I'm just like, it's fucking fine. Like then, like conversely, like social media was such a powerful tool in the book, and so many people networked and continue to network and built relationships through that. So like, it's
Good point.
You're not going to pick up a Thrasher and find that many people that we talk to in the book. They're not going to see themselves in the mainstream magazines or the core stuff. So I think that's why they've picked up the social media a lot. But at the same time, yeah, it's a bit of a trap. And I like that Spike Jonze movie, Her. Have you seen that?
Yeah, it's one of
Yeah.
I love that movie.
That's the trap, isn't it? Like, sort of just hearing what we want to hear and relying not on the real. So it's a double-edged sword, or I don't know. It's got the flip side's good and bad.
Did Spike Jonze, when Spike Jonze wrote that movie and made it, did he know AI was coming? Because it was kind of like it was like years pre-AI.
Before Siri, maybe? I'm not sure, but I feel that was
Siri the inspiration for that? Because he was like, it was like really ahead of its time, that the whole concept of that. Crazy, hey?
So yeah.
But that's what I'm doing. Like this is hard for me to say, but like I'm holding this thing constantly. It goes to bed. It goes next to my bed, you know, as a timekeeper and as an alarm clock, as something I listen to podcasts to sometimes to go to sleep, and then I wake up and it's right there, and then it's in my pocket all day, and then I'm using it now to write my questions. I'm like, what the?
Is there a good side to that too, though? Like, because if we're talking about broken homes, maybe we can find somebody on the internet that listens to us when the uncle isn't there or stuff. So I feel like, yeah, with everything, maybe it's, just a balance. It would be good if we had more older people just saying, like moderation or don't believe everything on the internet. But if you need to use it to reach out for this stuff, that's cool. Like at the moment, it's, as Anthony said, it's all encompassing and nobody kind of guides you through what's a good way to engage and what's a unhealthy sort of way to use it, maybe.
Can you self-regulate quite well, Indigo?
I'm like, I haven't been diagnosed, but I have a huge attention, thing, and I'm very energetic. So, and I'm a freelancer. So in some ways, putting my stuff out there kind of also is just paying my bills when, I can get work. But I don't think so. I think skateboarding's very addictive and so social media, and I'm a big fan of both. So I could do with some mentoring as well, like when to believe it and when to not. And that film, Her, was just so good for me to watch, like, oh yeah, like, it's a computer as well as like, what you're projecting onto the computer. So yeah.
Yeah, lonely guy. I get it too. Like I'm lonely a lot as well, and this thing gives me some company. It's insane, dude. Anthony, man, you're so epic, dude. I'm loving this. I'm loving like what you're talking about. I want to just talk a little bit about, your transition from high school into, I guess, what they call the real world. Wanted you on an academic pathway, and you said there was no way that you weren't going to college.
Yeah.
Is that what occurred?
Yeah, my mom, as I was saying before, she worked for the state, so at a university, so that meant I could go to a state school for relatively cheap. So
cool.
My compromise was like, I didn't want debt. I wasn't getting a free ride anywhere, so I got some scholarships. I went to art school. Initially, when I enrolled in the school, I was going to take a program that was a hybrid of graphic design and printmaking and illustration, because it was still like magazines were still not constructed, like print still wasn't constructed on desktop yet, desktop publishing. Like no one I went to school with had a computer except later my roommate, who took out like a $35,000 loan to buy a top of the line Mac scanner, all that stuff, So I ended up getting more into the fine art side of things. And I think I learned a lot of interesting concepts, but I obviously I'm not a fine artist now, but I relating to skateboarding, when I was a freshman, I went down to New York and I went to a place called See Here. It was a zine store. I believe it was on St. Mark's, or it might have been on 9th Street or something. 11th Street. I can't remember. It's going to bother me. But anyways, and I bought a Mark Gonzalez zine and I bought a bunch of like other weird ephemera, but I was really tripping that they had a zine from Mark Gonzalez. And when I went back to school, we had sort of like our lab, it was called, like our major 4-hour block of a day. And they were like, we want you to talk about like something that inspires you. And I showed my teacher and he's like, yeah, Basquiat already happened, asshole. Like he said, call me an asshole. And it was like, the whole thing at that time was like tough love and to be a dick. And he's like, yeah, this graffiti art, whatever the fuck, caveman drawing, like that's not a thing. Like you need to study the greats and like work on your craft. And like, he's like, people, oh, I can't draw, I'm a shitty artist, that already happened. And so they were like super dismissive of like this thing because, you know, teachers have their interests, right? And like maybe also going to school in Boston rather than New York or something, like they didn't see it. And the funny thing is like everything that dude talked shit on ended up becoming the thing that like changed culture. You know, like meanwhile, like whatever 40, 50 miles, 60 miles south at RISD, like Shepard Fairey is starting to do his entire thing, like in tandem almost, right? And it's pretty funny. But yeah, I was like, oh, I guess he's a fucking artist. He knows. So I need to study more traditional whatever and come up with my own thing. And then I got really sick my senior year, which I think had to do with being around all these gnarly chemicals all the time and like having mineral spirits on my hands. And there's like low ventilation and I'm using oil-based inks. And I got like super sick. My lymph nodes swelled up. I had to get like biopsies to see, like they thought I had non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. So by the time I was done school, I was just burned out. Like I'm burned out on art. I could have done something safer, but I was just like, I'd already started writing in college. So I just ran with that. I'm like, this won't make me sick. I find out later.
Wow, it's interesting.
A lot of writers get sick different ways from like smoking mad cigarettes and drinking, but the actual computer that I'm writing on or whatever is not going to make me that sick.
You're not inhaling fumes.
Yeah.
Oh, so it was interesting. It's influenced by like a health decision. Wow.
100%.
Yeah. So where'd you go from there? Like you started to move into the writing more. Where did it take you?
Well, I think the first thing I got published in Slap magazine, I might have been 19 or 20, maybe 20 years old.
Amazing.
And so
my favorite mag, it was.
I don't remember how it actually transpired, but I think it was a phone call. Like I had gotten in the door through my friend Sergei Trudnowski. He used to ride for Zoo York and Silver Star, Illuminati.
Yeah.
And he introduced me to Lance. He's like, dude, did you know Lance is like an old hardcore dude from DC? You guys have a lot in common. And I said, oh, I'd like to write for the mag. And he's like, well, just come up with an idea and write something. And I wrote this article on this fundraiser in New Jersey called Shred for Life. And it was huge. This like
heard of it.
Huge event in like a arena type space, like a convention center. And they did this fundraiser for cancer research. And I was like, I want to do this. And they were like, well, I guess they had heard that all the good East Coast pros at the time were going. And they had like pro photographer. And I did an article. And then after that, they just said, what do you want to do? And I was like, kind of stupidly in retrospect, I was like, I want to write about music because you got like, I think your music section's weak, which is a fucked up thing to tell your editor. But I just remember learning so much through Thrasher, you know, because Pushead had his column.
Yeah, that column was so epic.
So my thing was like, I thought there was so much amazing music happening that I wanted to bring that in. So I started interviewing bands and doing music reviews and an occasional article, but mostly music. And
sick.
To be honest, when your rent is like $250 a month and you're making like $600 to $800 a month writing like some record reviews. Like they used to pay you by the word. I think it was $1 a word or something like that.
What?
So you do 3 record reviews that if they print them, that's $600. 4, $800. If I do a feature, it's another $1,000.
Comparably, if you go back to the early days of $1 a word payments, and how's it changed? Is it still lucrative or more challenging in this content rich digital world?
Well, I used to work in the heavy content space where it's like you're pumping out things like every hour. Like when I worked at Vice, and they would have like, I think it was like 5 articles a day. Like an article is like 500 words, but I don't know. Like what I do is pretty unique. Like copywriting and skateboarding, there's not that much work, but there's not that much. It's like a very narrow space. You know what I mean? I don't know if in the days when I was getting paid $1 a word and I was like had moved to New York and tried to be a journalist, that could have been very lucrative too. You know what I mean? But for me, I was just so content that I could do what I want and live like comfortably for my means. You know what I mean? Like if your rent's paid with 1 record review and then the rest of your money is to fuck off, you're pretty psyched. And it's sort of the same thing here. Like I'm not into things. I have a lot of things, but I'm not into things, so I'm chilling.
So it's not driving you.
Yeah, no, like I just always wanted to be in a space where like I can take care of the shit I want and I'm not tripping. And I'm lucky enough that I don't have like couture tastes and I drive a used car and I'm happy, I'm a simple person.
How do you feel when you reread something you wrote 10, 15 years ago?
Depends. Like some of it's kind of like there's stuff that's cringy, but then also I'm like I think like there might have been, I don't know if it was like the band At the Drive-In or like maybe it was the Sea and Cake, but I was like reviewing this like kind of like more tender kind of album. It wasn't At the Drive-In because like they had songs that were tender. It was definitely like Sea and Cake or something like that. It was something like kind of melancholy or like Belle and Sebastian. I think I had some part about like how it was like it's even like painful. I'm getting like idiot shivers thinking about it, but something like, like just makes you want to sneak your foot over on the couch or some shit. And I'm like, idiot that's shivers. A bum out, like implying it was like a makeout record or something, and like some of that shit bums me out. Stuff idiot I got shivers. Wrong bums me out more because bad writing's bad writing. That's so good. It's fine, but I don't know. It's I just try to learn from it. Like if you look back on it and you're not into it, get better. Like my writing has gotten so much more simple and less sort of like everything used to sort of be like joke, or metaphor and da 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 da. And like it starts to turn into a fucking. Do you ever listen to the Beastie Boys and you're like, if you took out the word like in their songs, they wouldn't have songs. Like everything's like, it's like an avocado. It's like a fucking da 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 da. And you're like, is there more than metaphors here? I know it's like sacrilegious to say that, but it's like a lot of fucking metaphors or whatever. I'm using the wrong term. Whatever.
That would have been cool in the book if we just had full of metaphors. But see, Anthony's such a beautiful writer. The bits that he gave to the book, when I haven't read the book back that much, you don't kind of do that, but when I do it for whatever reason, when the bits that I know that Anthony's are just so they're like a novel. And I don't know if that's an insult to you, Anthony, but to me they read like a novel, which is really a way to connect, because the sociological writing is very technical and it can isolate and it's got its own purpose, but there's a lyricalness to it or something. And I've read a lot of your work actually, and like back with Leo Baker and, the skateboarding's not progressive on your own, Artless Industria. And yeah, I feel like it's economical writing, but it's also has a real human connection to it somehow. So that's my takeaway with your writing.
The other thing too is like, I'm really hyper conscious of like, this is a more recent thing of like, for some reason, there's like certain people that we feel okay to make fun of in skateboarding, and I'm not going to like name them, but like everyone feels cool to like talk shit on these people and not care about their mental health or like how it might actually impact them. And we all justify by being like, oh, they're fucking rich. Who cares? You know what I mean? But like, I don't know. I'd like to think that like some night when he's feeling down about himself, like Tony Hawk doesn't really want to read that comment that they're making fun of how he dyed his eyebrows or something. Like that's fucked up. And like, I think those comments are kind of whack. And I even apologize to Mr. Hawk for using that as an example. Like, I think we're like very, like, no one would say that about Jake Johnson. No one would say that about Cardiel, but someone would say that about this person or Gustavo Ribeiro or whatever. Like, it's fucking totally weird to me.
But is it because Hawk transitioned more to the mainstream?
Yeah, but like, who cares? He's a person. He's not that fucking rich. He's not
but
like
I'm
Tom
saying
Cruise.
But do you feel that? But do you feel when that happens to somebody that it almost gives them people permission to hang more shit on them, like they're more untouchable and they can get away with it?
Yeah, but like that's totally fine. But like, don't prop him up when you need him. When you need a skate park, then don't fucking call Tony Hawk. Fuck off. Figure it out yourself. You know what I mean? But like, it's like everyone loves to shit on these people until they need them. Everyone shits on a brand until they need it. It's like very like, oh, I'm fucking this until the check comes, and then you're wearing some goofy ass sunglasses, and you know what I mean? Like everyone does that shit. And it's like in my writing, like me personally, I just try to like, there are times where I'm like, I kind of like was dismissive of this person or use them as an example where I shouldn't have. And like, and then also it's like, I'm trying to sound smart and I don't want to sound smart. I'd rather just be dumb and just be myself and speak in plain language. And I'm not trying to like, I don't know. It's like, I don't need to write an article about like, I don't know, some movement in skateboarding. So it sounds like it's going to be in the New Yorker. You want to know why? Because it's not in the fucking New Yorker. And I don't have the editors of the New Yorker. And I don't have like a heritage literary mag behind me to make it that fucking good. It's like, it's almost like big fish, small pond. Like I get to write about a thing and there's like not that much competition. So now I can start waxing and fucking around on like Word Hippo or whatever the fuck to find clever words and be like, I truly enjoy the moment on film when fucking, Cater over-egged his back Smith. It's like, fuck off. Just say what the fuck is happening. You know what I mean?
Though, there's some like really interesting writers in skateboarding that have that flourish. Like, some of the books that I've read anyway, they're more, what's they called, like a memoir? The memoirs do sort of go that direction, and I think there's room for that because I don't think we should always just talk like simplify something that means so much to us. Like I can understand why people do ponder like, oh, when they did that backsmith, it sent sparks to my heart. Like I can understand that almost in some ways.
I'm saying for me personally, because it's like there's a bunch of people doing fucking guitar solos. We don't need Dream Theater. We don't need another guy shredding. You know what I mean? Like I'm not a shredder. I'm more the blues. Like I'm just trying to be simple because I know when I'm faking it. I know when I'm bullshitting. So.
Well, surely you would have caught yourself being hypocritical at times in your life and through your work. How are you keeping yourself personally accountable?
Just allowing, like...
Are you owning it?
There's two things. It's like the world decides when you made a mistake and you decide when you made a mistake, right? And like I'm conscious of both. Like I'm always trying to get better. And that doesn't mean shit. That's just very empty to say that. Like, you notice in this conversation, I backtrack because I say something and then I'm like, oh, fuck, I don't want someone to take that the wrong way or da-da-da-da-da.
Yeah.
And that's because, like, I'm very conscious of who I am and I'm conscious of things that might be easy for me to say or critique might not be easy for other people, and they might not be easy to hear. So I think, like, I keep myself accountable by saying, like, I know for a fact I'm not perfect. I always want to improve. I'm never going to be like fucking 22. I was the shit. 27. I was even better. 34. Man, I wish I could go back and be that cool. Like I'm constantly learning. Like there's ways I thought about the world that were wrong. There's biases that I had that were based on nothing. So like one is like constantly wanting to learn. Two, that is constantly trying to learn from the people that are a valued source that are marginalized, right? I don't need another fucking white dude telling me how to get rich on the internet. I don't need another fucking white guy with all the answers. I'm like kind of done with that, because like it's, I don't know if I said this to some people. It's like sometimes you ever look at like the records on your shelf, the books on your shelf, the art on your wall, and is it just a reflection of you? Do you just like it because it's just something that is very reflective of you? That's pretty fucking boring. And like I've been in that trap too. You know what I mean? Like, and I think it's like important to be like, okay, dude, I think I have enough. I've read enough Henry Rollins. Like I should have been done with that when I was 20. And I don't want to read the next iteration of Henry Rollins. No disrespect to Mr. Rollins, but it's like at some point you just got to make yourself uncomfortable. So like, it's like you're always learning. You're always thinking about who you're learning from, right? And then there's this other component. It's like, it's not necessarily linear. This other component is like, people will tell you when you fuck up, right? Now, I kind of thought about this the other day. It's very easy for someone who doesn't know me to be like, fuck that dude. Dude's a fucking blowhard. He thinks he's an ally. I bet he's actually fucking homophobic. I've heard him fucking stumble in interviews. Da 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 da. I know someone who knows him. That dude sucks, right? That's very easy to do. If you and I were very good friends and I was blowing it, say I had a problem with substances, it's going to be very hard for you to tell me I'm fucking up. So when someone close to me, someone who knows me, someone who really understands me is like, dude, you're blowing it. That's hard for that person to say. And that's a different type of criticism. Like Bull Troll 74 on the internet, I'm not really that fucking concerned. I've been writing since fucking writing on the internet began. I've been called every stupid fucking thing. I've had everyone talk shit to me. I don't give a fuck. You know what I mean? So it's like, but the world will let me know when I fuck up, and then I have to figure out how I want to deal with it,
Okay, I want to challenge you a little bit on that. You said you don't give a fuck. I mean, because I do, like, I feel like it's the part of the human condition to be upset when people are challenging you or people are calling you out.
Well, I don't know
how you can do that. I don't know how you can separate yourself from that. Personally,
if every time you write an article, the first comment is, "This dude sucks. He shouldn't be able to fucking write." Okay. You think you're smart. When you read that 100 times, you're just like, okay, whatever. Yeah. For me, I'm like, you know what? Then I'm not going to write. I am maybe being too cute, right?
Gotcha.
Now, being challenged on my views, I don't want to get into it, but I kind of spoke about someone I think who was being careless in how they talked about people, and I got a lot of flack for that. And because people jump to the conclusion of like, you're calling this person racist. It's like, no. I'm pointing out facts, boss. I'm saying this person has a tendency to be hypercritical and devote their content towards people who are black.
Okay.
I'm not calling them racist. I'm pointing out something, right? And I got some pushback on that, and I got really upset, as you said. Like I was like, fuck, because I thought like I didn't relay my thing. I didn't relay my point well enough for people to misconstrue it. And then at some point you're like, you know what? Why did I write that though? Right? Like you got to go back and you're like, no, you know what? And like, this is how I make peace with it. I legitimately wanted to write that. I legitimately felt passionate about it. I legitimately wanted people to look at it a different way, and they didn't. And until I have a conversation with the person that on the other side of it, it's done.
Gotcha.
If I ever have a conversation with that person, then that might be resolved. But but I don't know. Like when you're used to the criticism, it's like you don't trip on it that hard. Like, what are you gonna do? Call me fucking old? Yeah, I'm old. I know.
Yeah, but that's how you process it, and these are the questions you ask yourself. And to me, sitting here, it feels like maybe you're probably your harshest critic, so no one can criticize you harder than that.
Yeah, and the people around me. You know what I mean? Like I don't like
people you care about.
I value personal relationships. Like if my partner is hurt by something I do, I take that very seriously. It's just that's the criticism, because that's real criticism, right? Like I live with this person. If I offended them, I live with them and I have so much respect for them, but like when it's like internet chatter, like no one has respect for either person. So what does it
Gotcha.
matter? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What does it mean in skating if we have a lot of people that have had, like their childhood, maybe they've faced some rough stuff, maybe rejection, maybe they've had to be really tough on the outside just to survive things. Do we bring that into our adult relationships in skating? Like, have we got to a stage where we can have emotions, we can be a bit vulnerable around each other? We can be a dick and then say, okay, I was a dick, like, why? But like, how do we move on together? Like, are we at that stage yet? Or do we still take a lot of our toughness into skating because it's such an aggressive activity? And you do need to kind of be on guard when, maybe when you skate. Like, I'm just wondering, for men especially, like, is there now in skating a time where you can be vulnerable with each other?
I don't interact with people that much
Mm,
through skating. I do it mostly by
yeah.
myself. So, and I choose that because especially where I live, like it's mostly centered around parks, and I don't like the experience of
Yeah.
like every time I go to a park, it's like the first day of high school, and I'm not into it. I didn't grow up with that. I don't.
Yeah.
It's my personal thing, and like I enjoy just going. I go and skate the same fucking ledge by myself 3-4 times a week now,
Yeah.
and that's what I do. So like I don't know, but I mean, I think men in general have a hard time having like deeper conversations. That's why there's such a need for male coaches and therapists in the United States, you know?
Mm.
It's a lot of it is coded, and a lot of it is around like, or through alcohol. Like, how many times has someone fucking either told you they love you or they used to hate you when they're drunk? You know what I mean? Like, it's pretty.
It's fake conversation. I've talked about that a lot, you know. But speaking to what you said, Indigo, I was thinking about this. I was skating this street spot the other day. I mean, I'm old, like I'm 47 next year. And there's like the younger crew coming through, but the guys that are really on their game, they're in their late 20s. So they've been skating for a long time now, but they're, really sort of at their peak athleticism. And there's this part of me like, oh, I really want to keep up with them, and it reminded me of when I was a teenager. There was, I guess, this real toxicity amongst my group of friends of like having to push each other in a negative way, like one up each other and outdo each other, and who's going to do the biggest set and who's going to throw themselves off that gap. And in hindsight, it was quite toxic because it was like, if anything for validation from the boys, you were going to do it, whether it meant breaking your leg or hurting yourself. And I think it was so toxic, but then that translated into partying in my ear. It was like, well, I'm going to out party you now. I'm going to drink more than you. I'm going to stay up later. I'm going to do more drugs. And in my era in the 90s, it was like, if you had that balance between like skating hard and partying hard and you could maintain that, like that was like the top of the hierarchy. You were the alpha male. And it was so unhealthy. And like Anthony was saying at the start of our conversation, when he made reference to Dwayne Peters, for example, and I've spoke to other skaters who went that route, and then you see them all these years later, it never really ends well, unfortunately. So
I mean, I feel pretty. Feel pretty fortunate that like the majority of the time I've been involved in skateboarding, there was a place for me to interact with people who thought about skateboarding the way I did. Like I use like 1994 as a pretty big landmark for me of like girl goldfish and stereo visual sound. Like I like the like I'm a fucking beatnik dude and I read Kerouac and hang out at diners and smoke cigarettes and talk about literature. Like that was more interesting to me, right? And then that just became like a genre of skating. There's still like I'm the guy who carries around the camera all the time and fucking I like Truffaut films or whatever the fuck. Like the art person, like I've been able to be in the art person space and like and then I lived in New York for 20 years. So it's like, you have like Theories of Atlantis and then like all these different crews and like the people I would interact with through skateboarding, like they're I never even saw like a gnarly aggro person most of my time in New York. Like that doesn't they're aggro in different ways, you know what I mean? But like that stereotypical like socks pulled up, trucker hat, like, and I'm not saying that people who dress that way are a certain way either. I'm just saying like whatever your stereotype of like the aggro, like shut up and skate, fucking pound beer, grind coping person, that doesn't really exist in New York. So like I've been in a weird bubble, and now I'm in another bubble where I just kind of I'm helping with a skate park project here in New Mexico, but I'm still just like pretty isolated, and I enjoy skating by myself. I don't, because I'm not looking for skateboarding for community anymore.
Right. That's really interesting to hear that evolution.
It's like sketching in a sketchbook or doing a painting to me, you know?
You kind of still do like things that are very community based, like neither of us are making money from the book, for instance. And like with Consenters Red, you made some art stickers for us, which were really cool. And you're like a professional artist and you just did it for free. Like that kind of thing is still community, but I guess you don't have to hang all day in the same space and, eat food together or something. I don't know.
Yeah. I'm not like thirsting for, I'm 48 years old. I'm not like, oh, who's going to be my next buddy? You know, like I'm not in that head. I'm literally like, how the fuck do I jump higher? That's what I care about. You know, and like I go to the gym and there's like a foam block that I jump up on. I'm like, if I do this 3 times a week, I'll gain an inch on my vertical leap. I know it, you know, and like, it's probably not going to fucking happen, but that's where I'm at, you know?
If somebody came to the park that was like, using your ledge as well, does that still inspire you like a bit like a racehorse to like push yourself? Is that something inherent to skating, or is that something that you can just chill now because you're older, or it's just not your thing?
Well, I mean, like no one's like, no one's cutting the tree open to count the rings, so no one knows like what my age is. I'm just a guy. You know, like I'm just
great analogy.
If anything, it's fucking weird. Like, why is this like middle-aged dude bashing against this ledge by himself? I don't know. I think there is that strange element when people are looking at you that you perform differently and like push yourself, you know? But that's almost like anytime someone's looking over your shoulder, you know? But like kind of to what I was saying before, like I would never have anyone watch me draw or write. And so that's why I don't like skate parks. Don't watch me. I'll give it to you. I'll share it if I feel like it, but I don't fucking, why is this like, it's weird.
That's so interesting.
It really is. What a great perspective. I love some of the messages you've been hanging out there with us today, Anthony. Can you just repeat those three pillars you said? Something, can we just reiterate them, because they're beautiful messages I want to put out there, like learn something, learn from someone. What'd you say again?
You're sort of never done learning.
Never done learning.
You're never done learning, and you're not ever a perfect version of yourself.
Lovely.
And then when you have that thirst to learn, then you have to think about who you're learning from.
There you go. Boom.
Right? Like that's the actual meaning of the phrase idiom, question authority, right? It's not question everything, fuck the government. It's question the authorities, right? Who's the authority on literature? Who's the authority on vaccines? Who's the authority? Question those people, right? So like think about who you're learning from, right? And then the other thing is like,
love this.
Don't take criticism harshly from people you don't know. The people who are the closest to you are your harshest critics, you know? So it's kind of like there's those two pieces, and then around it is like the feedback, right? You have your center and then the feedback around it. And in that feedback, it's like how you process that information affects the other two. It affects your self-worth. It affects your learning. It affects where you put your energy. And so if you're focused too much on what other people think who don't know you, right? Like you're not learning again. I'm not learning if I read a bunch of comments that say I suck at writing. If there's one comment that said, you misrepresent this writing you did on gender was wrong, and I'm going to tell you why, that's the comment I care about. And if it's from someone I know personally, then I care about it even more because it impacts a personal relationship. You know what I mean?
Gotcha.
And there's a chance to learn there and correct it, and then it goes cyclical again. But I don't go back to square one when someone just tells me I'm dog shit. Like,
okay. give me some context and give me some actual critical feedback, right? Man, these are beautiful messages. I want to start winding it up, but I just want to hit you with a few fun, like quick questions. Like,
Sure.
what would you say the most influential skate video for you is of all time?
Questionable. Plan B question. It's two.
Oh.
It's tied. Plan B questionable because it like set the bar in such a crazy way, but also it was super creative and it had just such a fun vibe to it. But then I think visual sound, even a lot of people say memory screen, but I think visual sound was like the first really like interesting artistic video where it made me think about skating in a completely different way. And then last is Eastern Exposure 3, just because like
Interesting.
I saw a lot of that stuff happen. And
like Ricky Iola.
Yeah, Rick and Sergey and Tim O'Connor and Jamal Williams. And I've lived in Boston and Jamal was filming a lot of that stuff then. And just seeing all that happen and seeing the East Coast represented and have that much of an impact in skateboarding, it's like, I guess that's the trifecta.
Nice. It was super breakthrough, really, for the East Coast, right?
Absolutely.
Up until then, they were it's all about California.
It was a different way of skating. More, It was like seeing people push and seeing people go through the streets and use everyday objects in a different way, and having it was a validation thing too, of like everyone's like, okay, they're the shit now. Matt Reason's the fucking shit, you know? And Freddie Gall, like, people forget how technical Freddie was when he first started, you know?
Yeah. And again, like just that adaptation to a different urban environment, and not just that, different climate, you know, like California's got one of the most, what is it, like, you know, mono climates on Earth, apparently. You know, it's like
Southern
sunny.
California for sure.
Southern California is, what is it, sunny 300 days a year or something crazy like that. Whereas East Coast, you know, dealing with those harsh winters, and yeah, it's crazy. So, and I know it's a really hard one, but give me some actual skateboarders that have probably had the biggest impact on you or really stand out for you.
Stand out, Ray Barbie.
Dude, wow.
Number one, like creativity, just beautiful style, interesting person, musician, very upbeat person. Like, I've had the opportunity to speak to Ray.
Have you?
Amazing. Jamal Williams, for probably the first pro I ever saw that I really like interacted with, and still out there doing it. Like, here's the theme: both of those people are still out there doing it. Yeah. Jamal's incredible. Jason Lee, Gons, right? Like, incredible people. Alexis Sablone, incredible.
Yeah, okay.
And then I'm going to try to like keep it to people like really changed my view, I guess. And then, I mean, just pound for pound, I think Mike Carroll's the best person that's ever done it, ever. Yeah. Just incredible. And then I'm trying to think if there's any. I think Greg Hunt as a filmmaker and skateboarder too. Yeah. And I want to.
It's a tough question, but I think you've really.
You know, I think one other person that like doesn't. I'm a huge fucking fan of Jason Dill's skateboarding.
Oh, dude.
I think Dill's such an incredible skateboarder, and I think what he's done, as far as like his artwork and his photography, I think is really, really impressive. Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, I could just go. My brain just goes to the next and to the next to the next. Yeah. You know?
It's just so nice talking to someone who's like my age range. You know, because like I'm having to deal with like the reality that I am getting older, and I speak to kids who have been skating for 10 plus years who don't actually know who Danny Way is and stuff like that. And I'm like this is it. Like I've finally arrived at the place where I'm that old guy that, you know, I'm talking about the good old days, and I really try hard not to do it, but so I love those ones.
Yeah, and awesome. Like you know, Keith Huffnagel forever is like one of my favorite ever. And then like a jillion young people, like, and I don't need Cyrus Bennett, but Cyrus isn't even that young anymore in skateboard terms, but another incredible Dick Rizzo, incredible skate. I don't know, I can go on all day.
Do you mind if we reflect on Keith's life a little? Can you give us some?
So I interviewed him a few times and like interacted with him, just very casual, like, hey, what's up, kind of person.
Okay.
As far as like in speaking with him, I think, you know, what he did for the East Coast is so like he went to San Francisco, that was the epicenter of skateboarding at the time, and made himself a top shelf name from New York, right? And was going to college at the same time and really skated differently and stood out and had a unique style and opened up a lane of like powerful skateboarding with some tech thrown in. And I think like what I understand about Keith and like my in speaking with him and like how the company still runs is like he just definitively knew who he was, right? Like a lot of people start brands and they try to pander, and like he really was compelled to like make stuff that he liked and wasn't afraid to be like fuck it if it didn't work, you know. And like he really, and the other thing too I think that was really important is like we're talking about like younger companies and how it's different starting a company now because you can start a company from your phone. He's like, to me, dude, you need stores, you need places, like a physical place to like from touching a board to standing on it to talking to people. You know, aside from like the undeniable mark he made on skateboarding, it's like that far into his journey, still being a kid and still wanting to pay homage to like what he grew up with. And also too, like if I think what's unique about what he did business wise is he wasn't afraid to collaborate with people much smaller and just give people their shine because he liked it. Oh, you make fucking cool ceramics? I don't give a fuck how many Instagram followers you have. I want to work with you. And then, oh yeah, by the way, I'll do a collaboration with a giant bike company because I fucking like bikes too. Like it's just, it wasn't like trying to ladder up into anything except like making cool shit. You know?
Yeah, I watched an interview with him. It might have been on his Epically Lated, I can't remember. And he really stayed true to that. But obviously in business, you've got to be able to turn an income to survive as well, like, you know, from a practical perspective. And he was talking about how when he first started the brand, it was like they were going through really dark times financially and they were going out of business. And then they made the weed socks, you know, the socks with the marijuana leaves on them. And he said they basically saved the company. It's just like the best story because they were so popular, those socks. I mean, they're still popular. I still see kids wearing those socks, you know.
Yeah,
I
I
don't
mean,
know, that's just a memory
the
from
weed
recently
socks brought in the
about
income
him.
because they're easy and cheap to make, and like a lot of what they were doing and still do is like making stuff out of rare cone denim and really trying to like make stuff made. A lot of it was made in the U.S. and going to factories in San Francisco and being like, I need a jacket like this. Can you make it? And like that's a lot more expensive, you know. And it's pretty interesting though. I mean, I think that also the way that, you know, just creating a business for you and all your friends to like where you actually are real employees and live sustainable lives, like that's an amazing thing that he did for everyone, you know.
Yeah, and I just think then things will happen. Like, and I think the message he was trying to convey in that interview was like, you know, he was almost going to give up, and he's like, and then that the most strange thing happened where these socks just saved them, and it was his message was like, don't give up before the miracle happens, and it's always darkest before the dawn, you know. And I just was like, that's just such a rad message to just in anything you do. It's dark. It's always darkest before the dawn, and anyway, it's good.
I think that's the coolest message, Shan.
Thanks.
Really
I
is.
reckon.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's nice.
half man. I mean, I bawled my eyes out when he passed away. Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, I like anyway. Well, listen, it's been epic, and I'm so grateful. And if you're listening, and I did promote the book Skateboarding Power and Change on my episode with Dr. Indigo Willing, which go and check out. I think it's episode 205, Indigo 206. Go and check it out. Recent episodes, and
Thank you.
I'll put a link to the book in Anthony's episode as well. So if you scroll down, click on the link and check it out. In my opinion, I think it's a legacy piece that will stand the test of time. So, is there anything you want to end on, guys, or you good?
No, just thank you so much, and thanks for asking like so many thoughtful questions. And again, sorry if I'm wordy. You tapped into some stuff I never talked about, so the floodgates were open.
Yes, sir.
So good.
All right. Have a great day, guys.
Thank you all. Take care.